Well, it was really by accident because when I graduated from medicine and had done my internships, I decided that the best thing to do to train for being a general physician in medicine, in other words an internist, I had better learn something about the science of medicine. So I decided that I spent some time in pathology would be a good idea. So of course I went into pathology with the idea of training for general medicine. And while I was there, one of my teachers in the department, a man called Bernard Lennox, who was a great character, he invited me to join in his research. And so I said he told me I wasn't doing very much of interest, and I might as well come and help him. In actual fact, we were all working very, very hard at training in pathology, but I was very glad to come and work with him. So what we did was we looked at, he had decided that the best way of studying individuals with paradoxical sex anomalies would be to use the buccal smear as a screening tool to search for patients with Klinefelter syndrome. So my job was to make buccal smears of, first of all, children with undescended testes, and then when we didn't find any Klinefelter syndrome among the children with undescended testes, I said, oh, well, I know that Klinefelter syndrome is associated with infertility, so why don't I go to the infertility clinic? And so I went to screen patients in the infertility clinic, and the 8th patient I found was a patient with Klinefelter syndrome. So to cut a very long story short, I found that about 11% of the males in this infertility clinic with severe infertility problems had Klinefelter syndrome. Okay, and as some of these males had learning difficulties, some of them had been at special schools. I thought, well, perhaps if learning difficulty might be a part of this syndrome, so perhaps we should screen children with learning difficulties. And we screened both children and adults with learning difficulties using this buccal smear test. And the result was that 1% of the males that we screened had this same condition. And of course, afterwards we learned that Klinefelter syndrome was quite common. It was about between 1 in 500 and 1 in 700 of the general population, but this was a definite increase in frequency among those with a handicap. And I'm sorry this is so long a story, but the story is quite good. So one of these patients turned out to have spermatogenesis, and I should explain that the urologist who was in charge of the infertility clinic had part of his workup for the infertility male patients was to do a testicular biopsy. And as I was in the pathology department, I had access to all the testicular biopsies from these patients. So I did a general review of these, first of all, of these testicular biopsies, and found a great deal more patients with Klinefelter syndrome among them. And that interested me greatly.